So the last time we saw the Red Roses in action was in Vancouver during a WXV, when producer Shira told me they became the first ever team to surpass 97 world rankings points, 97.56. That is as close to completed it, mate, that any team has come. Unprecedented winning rate, 50 from 51 matches. 20 in...
It's that one that stands out,
I was about to say, literally, that's awesome, but that one happens to be a World Cup final.
Every time I see that stat on behalf of the Red Roses, I'm like, oh, the power of that one.
Literally one.
How big a loss would it then be if they lost to France on Super Saturday?
I think it would be one of the best things to happen to them.
100%.
Even considering the fact that the psychological scar of the last World Cup final...
It's still an arena that, with due respect to a tournament I adore and is huge and historic, in this year of years, it's less consequential. It doesn't matter as much. And
I can't believe you just said that.
I agree with them, though, 100%.
The thing that scared me more than anything was reading and hearing the reaction from some of the Red Roses from the pressure that Canada put them under. Bearing in mind they still won that game in Vancouver, but they were like, oh God, that got really close. Oh, my heart. Oh, I've never wanted to feel that. And it's just like, right, actually, you've barely ever lost. And if you're a Saracens, a Gloucester player, you're still really never losing.
Or going backwards.
Yeah, you've
you
probably...
don't get tested. You spend your life sitting on a nice little armchair going forward.
Yeah, because everyone around you is working their socks off, and that's great, and it's testament to the skill level of everyone there. So you've worked hard for it, but equally, you find yourself under the cosh in a World Cup semi-final, and all of a sudden your brain's gone to mush because you've never felt that pressure, because the last time it was in Vancouver, and it got down to a few points, but... I think, all of the best people who've won anything talk about where loss played a part. And that World Cup final loss will play a part. But I wouldn't mind if they had the resolve and learning from that happening one or two more times if they're to have all the armoury they're going to need to win it in September.
The other thing about loss and about learning from losses, you've got to be put in the same situation or a similar situation again. So you can go and you can get beat and you can be like, we can sit and watch it and be like, next time we should have done this or we should have done that. But until you get that moment again or something similar that forces your decision making, because the biggest thing you think when you're under pressure is you lose time and you generally lose space. So everything has to be quicker. But like Nick says, your brain wants to work slower because haven't experienced this before. So you want more time, but actually that's the thing you've got less of. And I think the thing for the Red Roses is just losing a World Cup final every 50 games is not going to be the thing that learns from you, being squeezed and tested. And I think more importantly, the bit around the dominance of Gloucester, Sarries, Bristol that hold lots of Red Roses, again, does nothing for them, because it's not like you can even say it. You look at Meg Jones at Leicester. She's thrived, but she's thrived with less time. She'll go into Red Roses camp and almost, like, I can testify for this, having played at DMP, almost like the game's being played in slow motion.
Yeah.
Because your pack's going forward, the quality of the pass you're getting, it's on the money. Like, literally, you can get flatter and flatter because the game is slower than you've experienced. For some of the girls, they've never experienced what it's like to go back and have to generate space or make good decisions or find space, because actually everything for them is always going forward.
We were on a media call, I remember, with Gloucester players when they lost the 3 in a row in the autumn, which was the most they'd ever lost in the previous 2 seasons put together. Yeah. And we were saying, and how are you sort of feeling at this period, going through it? I was almost going to call it a crisis, sorry, but how are you feeling about it? And the players went, we've been referring to it as a crisis. And you're like, oh, this isn't a crisis. You've lost a couple of games and you've had players away with injury. You're going to be fine. But, I'm slightly concerned that you're referring to it as a crisis because they don't lose. How often does Mo lose these days? How often does Zoe Allcroft lose as England captain? Or these sorts of players. How often does Marley Packer lose? 3 or 4 times a year at the very most.
And then the other thing that becomes interesting about losing is then how you deal with it as a player in that moment. So, like, do you go inside yourself? Do you become more vocal? Like, how do you react? Therefore, how do I now speak to... So how does Mo and Zoe's comms change because they're losing and they're feeling the pressure, so they're getting a bit tight. But it just... And until you're squeezed in that way, these were all the things that I suppose were different about 2014. We talked about a lot of this,
Really?
and we'd work through a lot of like bad day, good day.
What was your Women's Six Nations like before you won in 2014?
So we lost so 2013, we'd been to New Zealand. We'd been beaten 3 tests in New Zealand, like absolutely battered by the Kiwis. We then got to the Six Nations and we lost the opener against France away in that World Cup year. And those for me were, on top of 2010, were huge moments because they just made you reassess, and all the things that you thought you were doing well were like, oh, we need to have another look at this. And one of the biggest things, Kat Merchant said it, in 2014, when we lost to France, everybody knew it was happening, but it was almost like you were in a bubble or you were underwater, and everybody knew it, but nobody had any way of stopping it or having any language to solve the problems. So we all recognised it, which is great, and it's the first step, but we couldn't solve it. And I think that was huge going into 2014 when we got squeezed a little bit by Canada in that final, and certainly in the group game. We'd had language, we'd built communication streams, we'd built a leadership group that was really resilient and knew what to do because we'd been there and we'd had that experience quite recently. And I think that was huge for when the pressure comes, because you can talk about it and you can start to plan it, but until you've experienced it together and it's shared, I think it is harder to bring it to life.